Candlewall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Muse Writers Center, so welcome. Before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our organization. We're one of the largest literary centers in the country now, and before the pandemic, we had everything in person, and now we have everything online. So you can see our classes and events and other programs, our outreach on our website, which is the-muse.org, the-muse.org. And our new winter spring 2021 schedule is online now with about 80 virtual classes. And don't forget that we have a robust tuition assistance program, so we don't turn anyone away from our classes because of finances. And please, if you think you can't afford a class, just register and check the tuition assistance box and we will help you. Last year we gave out more than $20,000 in tuition help. And again, we offer hundreds of literary events a year just like this, and they're all online right now. And you can again check it out on our website, the-muse.org. And a quick disclaimer before we get started. All the work that is read by the readers is their original work and is owned by that reader unless otherwise noted. Some of the work here today is published and some of it is not published, but this live stream is not a publication of unpublished works. A recording of this stream will be available on our website event page through YouTube, and you can always rewatch it, or if you're watching it on that recording, hello and welcome. Anyway, the students, teachers will, for the most part, introduce their students. I'll be filling in for a couple of the teachers who couldn't be here this evening, and I have a few of my own students to introduce too. It's very exciting. Our first reader is, I'm very pleased to introduce Jane White, who is my student in the fiction studio on Monday evenings. Jane is a fantastic writer who is working on a couple different novels, and we always are at the edge of our seats or edge of our computers waiting for her next submission. She's also a member of the board of directors here at the Muse Writers Center, and we're very grateful for her service to us. Let's welcome Jane White for her reading.
Good evening, and thank you everybody out there in Cyberland for joining us tonight. I am reading from my current work in progress, and so I'll just start. Lizzie, you still here? Andrew's voice rang out. Yes, she jumped up and nearly lost her balance in doing so. Yes, I'm here. I'm so glad I caught you. He walked in and sat down at one of the chairs in the front row. I couldn't leave for Christmas and not say goodbye. He held a wrapped square in his hands. Me too. It's been a crazy couple of days. She walked to the front of her room. The Christmas pageant went off well, didn't it? What else could she say? Small talk and nonsense. Keep your emotions in check. Focus on your trip to London. Yes, it has been. He sat there, his gaze intent on her. Off to Iowa then, tomorrow? She quizzed. Our flight leaves at noon. Plenty of time to get to the airport without having to get up so darn early. It'll be good to see family. Family. She'd never be included in that description. He held out the package, shiny and festive in its bright, patterned holiday way. I got you a present. Just a little something I thought you'd like. You didn't need to get me a gift. I'm sorry, I didn't get you one. She flushed. To be honest, I didn't get anyone a gift this year. I've been a bit tight. You don't need to worry about that. I just wanted you to have this. He continued to hold the box out towards her. Please, it's something I know you will like. She reached out and gingerly took it from his hand. It felt like a CD. It probably was a CD. Hard to disguise it unless you wrapped it in another box. Thank you. She kept her eyes down, avoiding his look. Josh tells me you're headed to London tomorrow for the whole break. I bet that'll be an adventure, Andrew stated. Yeah, I haven't really explored London properly. I've been loads of times, but usually for a day, maybe two. Not enough to really get a feel for the place. What will you get up to? Sightseeing? Tower of London? Big Ben and all that? Or more interesting places? Andrew was genuine in his wanting to know. We're going to a couple of plays that Josh knows people in, one with Colin, his current interest. She stopped for a moment. Actually, Colin has lasted longer than most. A good sign, I hope, for Josh. Andrew sat back ever so slightly. That sounds like fun. And during the day? She laughed. I'll head to some museums, the National Gallery and the Tate. I want to go to Portobello Road and some of the markets, a touch of old London. And of course, getting lost will be my primary aim. It is confusing getting around London, isn't it? Do you have an A to Z guide? Yes, a battered copy from one of Josh's friends. I don't know how one could ever really know how to get around, even if you've grown up in London. It's so different to New York in that way. She thought for a moment. Then again, Staten Island and the Bronx are foreign countries to me, so I suppose it's the same for Londoners. They know their patch of the city, and the rest of it is the same mystery for them as it is for us. She looked down at the gift in her hands. Open it. Andrew nodded towards the gift. She turned it over again. Would you mind terribly if I wait until Christmas? It's just that I like to have something to open on the day, and this year, my gifts from home haven't made it here yet, so I'll have nothing. Andrew's face reflected a disappointment, but he recovered quickly. That's fine. I know. Well, I hope you'll like it. His voice broke ever so slightly. Please don't take it the wrong way. It'll just be fun to have something for Christmas morning, that's all. She reached her hand out to touch his arm. Yes, of course. I'm happy that I'm able to provide the gift that you'll open. Makes it special. He began to stand up. I'll find something for you in London. It'll be a surprise. She made an attempt to bring back the easy chatter they just had. He nodded. I do hope you have a lovely time back home. I'm sure there's wonderful family traditions. If living over here has taught me anything, it's one that cherishes their family back home much more than if they were around the quarter. An unintended upside, wouldn't you say? Yes, it will be nice to see everyone. It can be exhausting, but a good kind, I guess. Thank you so much for this gift. It's like 2 gifts in one, the actual gift, and then I'll know that I'll have something to open on Christmas. Safe travels, my friend. Her mood was lifting, almost like a yin-yang response to Andrew's glum. You're welcome. It's just a little something. He paused and looked at her. Merry Christmas, Lizzie. May your trip to London be magical. He started to lean in towards her, then straightened abruptly. She walked towards him and gave him a little hug and a peck on the cheek, something she'd never done before. Merry Christmas, Andrew. See you in the new year. Thank you so much. Enjoy all the rest of the readers.
Thank you, Jane. That was lovely. Our next reader is another member of my fiction studio, and his name is Chris DeMatteo. And Chris is also a teacher of history and a teacher at the Muse for some special seminars, so check those out. Chris is a science fiction writer who writes pretty hard science fiction, actually, set in the future, in a near future Earth times. That means that perhaps in his novel, people will be watching this video in the future. It's pretty cool. Anyway, Chris is a fantastic writer, and he's been working on some very exciting scenes recently, and I can't wait to hear what he's going to read for us this evening. Let's welcome Chris.
Oh, thanks for being here, everyone. So really quick overview. This takes place a couple chapters into sci-fi epic I've been writing. It's a few hours after a strange ship crashed into a mountain and exposed something inside, and the team that is first dispatched to go check it out. And then something bad happens and they get trapped in there and get under attack. Water dripped in large, slow droplets from a faint crack in the corridor ceiling. Kyle attempted to count them, each droplet falling every few seconds into a shallow puddle. If they had been falling for 1,000 years, where did all the water go? Then he recalled the Hokuto, which probably has something to do with the fracture, allowing melted snow to leach into a facility otherwise untouched for well over a millennium. Kyle sat cross-legged on the floor, head down below the rim of the barricade, feeling like a child in timeout. In front of him, Warren sat on the edge of the checkpoint barricade, calm and collected, back mostly toward the fluidic wall and any potential danger, his pulse rifle balancing between his knees. Every so often, he'd raise it for cursory inspection, brushing off some non-existent dust. Kyle observed this ritual for an unknown number of minutes. Warren would raise his rifle, glance at the left side, then the right, run his hand along it, switch some switches, then replace the rifle between his knees. After a moment, "Why do you do that?" Kyle said. He didn't know why he needed to know, other than out of a simple need to put his mind elsewhere. Warren raised his brow at him, but otherwise didn't respond. Your weapon, the constant examination, Kyle pointed. Warren glanced back down at the weapon, seemed to contemplate the thought for a brief moment, then offered a shrug. What else is there? He spoke as if it made perfect sense. Oh, Kyle dropped the subject. But he desperately needed to talk with someone, quickly discovering that being in his own head for so long under such circumstances was not ideal. Dr. Hollow had his eyes closed, leaning back against the collapsed table, using it as a lounge, half its legs still standing. The tabletop sloping up from the ground, dust and dirt clung to the sides of Harlow's jacket. He hadn't really said a thing since Morgan got the call of the attack. In fact, he seemed asleep. In 5 minutes, or was it 10? Every minute or so, Kyle swore he heard muffled weaponry, phantom firefights starting around inside the mountain. He logically knew that wasn't really possible, his head playing tricks, but still he heard them. In reality, the inner facility remained mostly silent, cut off from the outside sounds, except for the now continuous electric hum emanating from the central open space, about 10 meters away. With no way to tell how everyone was faring back through the fluidic wall, and with no one having returned to offer report, he hoped for the best. The alternative was too terrifying to dwell upon, and so he turned away from the ominous empty corridor, turning instead toward the ominous, mostly empty dome and its massive spire, whose bulk was blocked by the comparatively low ceiling of the corridor. Don't do that, Warren said, causing Dr. Harlow to stir. Do what? Kyle turned, unsure of who Warren spoke to. Dwell, he said, leaning forward. You're thinking about an infinite number of possibilities. You're thinking about how you'd react once chaos arrives. Stop. There are only 3 possibilities as to outcome. We make it out of here, we're captured, or we're killed. At least 2 of 3 options where you survive. Pretty good odds. He paused, looking off to the side as if what he said was profound in some way. As for how you'll react when the shooting starts, now that's the question. You can't possibly know until it happens. Training only prepares you so much, and you have none, which makes you more of a wild card, to be honest. So sit back, relax, and enjoy where you are. History, he smiled. Kyle simply stared at the man, unsure if he was serious. Another huge drop of water landed in the puddle. Dr. Harlow raised his head, arching his eyebrow as if also contemplating what the hell he just heard. Thanks for the pep talk, Kyle said finally. No problem. Warren brought his rifle up for inspection. Another splash in the puddle. Kyle was lost. What was he doing here? He had no skill set of any kind. His life was books and research, not... He needed a weapon. Maybe that would help. He only fired a gun a couple times in his life as a kid when his grandfather brought him to the range at 3rd Fleet headquarters. But he knew enough of the basics, point barrel only at things you want to go away. Do you have an extra gun? Warren sighed, contemplating the request before swinging his pack around. You sure? He wasn't. What would he do with a gun? But instead, Kyle nodded and said, just in case. Dr. Hollow stood, brushing the dirt from his clothes and ignoring Warren's order to stay below the barricade. If you happen to have 2, well, Warren stopped, turning in a flash, kneeling behind the barricade, rifle aimed down the empty corridor toward the fluidic wall. Dr. Harlow dropped back to the ground. Kyle really wished Warren finished grabbing him a gun. Announce yourself, Warren said. He hadn't a clue what Warren heard or how he heard it. Just me, Andrea rounded the corner, easing the tension precipitously. Come on, Morgan wants them out of here. Overwatch is coming. The attack? Warren relaxed, rising from his position behind the barricade. Holding, she said, at the hangar. Don't know why, but we have a window. Morgan wants them out. Andrea looked past Warren directly at Kyle. He felt exposed. Out? Dr. Harlow said. You can't leave. Not after all we discovered. He waved a hand behind him. This will take months, if not years, to analyze and document. What about the fleet? Harlow's faceplate fogged up as he worked himself into anger. We're on Nigeria, for fuck's sake. Core world, 3rd Fleet, millions of Estradi. We can't just let a bunch of marauders into our home and Doc. Andrea threw up her hand. People are dead. You're a civilian. You're leaving. End of discussion. She turned, darting back down the corridor. Dr. Harlow remained speechless, turning to stare back out toward the dome and spire, as if in longing, torn. For a brief moment, Kyle thought his professor might actually try to stay, but instead he turned back, grabbing his shoulder and his bag from the floor, defeated. And I'll end there. So I got the light.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. So our next reader is not one of my students. I should be so lucky. Mark Passar took a class. I believe he's going to be reading from a class he took from our former poet laureate here in Virginia, Tim Siebels. I have heard Mark's poetry at readings, and I've read some of his work. It is amazing stuff. And he has such a wonderful way with the sound of his poems too. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Mark read for us. Let's welcome Mark Passar. And you're muted. Okay, unmute yourself.
There we go. Thanks so much, Michael. I have 3 poems that I'd like to read. The first is entitled Spilled Salt. Black smoke rises from the yellow-orange flame of the kerosene lantern. Morning will reveal a smudge on the ceiling. Winter storm power outage, cold and dark in the kitchen where we huddle. I knock over a salt cellar in the shape of a snail, a gift from a cousin's long ago vacation to Burgundy. I scoop up the spill with the teaspoon, take a pinch, toss it over my left shoulder. My 10-year-old asks why. I tell her, a long time ago, salt was precious, used as money. People rubbed salt on meat to preserve it so they wouldn't starve. They thought only the devil would cause salt to be spilled. The mention of the devil draws her close. The spill invited the devil to work his mischief. He lurks behind your left shoulder, waiting. Salt tossed over the shoulder blinds him, makes him helpless, makes him think twice before messing with you again. I take her hand, lantern in the other. We walk to the den. I find a coffee table book on Renaissance art. Leonardo knew about the evil in spilled salt. Here, look at the Last Supper. See the spilled salt by the right hand of Judas? Her dark eyes widen further in the dim light. Her hand grows clammy. She leans in, whispers, "Is there anything behind me?" This is entitled Blood Tide. It starts with an epigraph. Blood has its tides, systole, diastole, the flow, the ebb, the tug of home primordial. Shared internal seas divided by ocean, kiss on each cheek, bear hug from this bear-like man. I part from my Parisian uncle, our second and final visit. I am 25. Edouard, awarded painter, hero of the Maquis, red thread lapel line of the Légion d'honneur, inhaler of unfiltered Gauloise, crowned by a Basque beret. 2 decades earlier, patron of my first taste of coffee, first touch of wine, progenitor of my acrophobia, dangled over a railing from the height of the Eiffel Tower, a joke. These things I knew. Tonton, I say. Tonton, 2 drum hits. Familiar syllables cinch familial ties. Strange to part from distant, close kin. Sadness, loss, regret, stirred and served warm. My mother there. I did not think of it then. I do so now and can imagine, but cannot know her feelings on leaving her brother. A return to a house an ocean away, in a cooler clime, to a cold bed topped by a hard angel. This is Life Interrupted. This is a persona poem. By the time it was discovered, the outcome was immutable. The surgeon simply opened and closed. The knife could not help. I didn't see it coming. The predator prowling in the shadows, quick as a cheetah, stealthy crawl, then deadly leap. How many more heartbeats, how many more inspirations before expiration. Weeks, not months, I'm told. Time to order affairs, to gather those I love. Time to surrender hopes of retirement, dreams of travel. Time to regret the unwritten poems, the unsung songs, the moments of shared intimacy dimmed in the glow of a television. All the mindless hours of inattention, the lack of focus, the betrayal, the fearful refusal to be, at last, more me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was lovely. Thank you for reading for us. Our next teacher who will be introducing a student is Desiree Cooper, and we are so fortunate at the Muse Writers Center to have Desiree teach for us. She taught for us before the pandemic and also now online, and she has a wonderful series of 4 one-meeting seminars that are, the first one I think starts in a couple of weeks, that she's offering this spring session. So let's welcome Desiree Cooper.
Thanks, Michael. The Muse is single-handedly getting me through this pandemic. So any of you who are watching and haven't looked at the classes, signed up, or supported the Muse, take the opportunity to do so tonight after you hear these good readers. It's my pleasure to introduce a student, Elizabeth Hurwitz. I won't call her my student because we've learned so much from each other working together in a group that we call the Pandemics. She is a Michigan-based elder law attorney. She's also a film producer. She has a documentary that's out now called Stranger Fruit. You can find it on Amazon Prime if you have that. And it's about the Ferguson murder of Michael Brown, who was killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri. And it has the story from the point of view of the Brown family. I highly recommend it. One thing that I found amazing about Lizzie's writing is that she was never the same writer twice. That whenever she came to class and shared her work, we didn't know if we were going to get flash, a novel excerpt, memoir. She's adventurous and tries it all. So I have no idea what you're going to hear tonight, but here's Lizzie.
Myself. Here we go. Unmuting. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay. All right. This is called Raspberries. And Des has already heard this, but I did work on it a little bit more since the last time we worked on it together. Okay. When did you start looking for us? When I was 19, about 30 years ago. Whoa, little lady. Now I have a big sister as well as a little sister. Cool. This was only the second time I visited my stepbrother, Bobby, since I located the family 2 months ago. We're on a 2-lane blacktop, 20 miles outside Grand Rapids, corn on each side of the road, waiting to be harvested. I have no idea why he's calling me little lady, but he has from the moment we met, and now it's stuck. There is no AC in the cab. Windows are all wide open in the truck. Sweat drops from both our foreheads. So if you're okay doing it, could you tell me something about our mother? Well, you know, she died because the doctor screwed up the operation on her lady parts and left a fucking sponge inside her. They were just supposed to cut out the cancer, not leave a calling card, for Christ's sake, assholes. And you know, she was always super clean, never wanted to wear anything twice. She did laundry almost every day. As soon as we were old enough, she made us do a lot of laundry too. And then about a week after the operation, that sponge they left inside her started to make her smell bad, like all the time. It smelled like she had a dead, rotting animal inside her. She was so ashamed. She basically hid from people the longer it went on. Finally, she got them to cut her open again and take the damn thing out. But she had to promise not to sue them for them to agree to do that second operation. Assholes. Then she was okay? Nah, cancer had already spread. Went into her legs, under her arms, and then into her tits. It was a real mess. You know, she was so young when she passed, you know, younger than you are now. She had Cal and me look for you after she knew she wasn't going to get any better. We did all these phone calls. We called agencies. We thought you'd been adopted and sent to California. We even had Ma's sister, Brenda, who lives out there, do some looking for you too. She really wanted to find you. It's so freaky that you look just like her. You're a damn clone, little lady. I notice that there is a ghost positioned on the console between Bobby and me. The ghost nods, pulls a face. Definitely a clone. I don't say anything for a few minutes. Bobby keeps his eyes on the road. He's driving pretty fast and there's hardly any traffic. A tractor once, but it pulled over to let us by. Bobby's only about 3 inches taller than me, and I am short. Our mother was even shorter. He is built like a fire plug, big shoulders, short arms, solid muscle legs, hair like mine, thick, wavy course, out of control the longer it grows. I notice that his ears are identical in shape to mine. You know, right, that Mom had a little pill problem. No, not really. I mean, Lana hinted at something like that, but I didn't know for sure. Lana likes to trash talk. It was Dr. Rude, Ma's second hubby. He got her hooked. You'll meet him next weekend at Richie's party. He's an asshole too. But we're all nice and friendly to him now since he's old and rich, and we're hoping he leaves us some bucks when he kicks off. But he really messed up Ma for a bunch of years. The scene has changed outside the truck. Now we're riding alongside rows and rows of low bushes. What are those? Raspberries. Looks like that boy's got himself a real raspberry ranch. Man, I love me some raspberries. I want to tell him that we have that in common, that it's my favorite fruit too, but he's off again, already on to another story. Bobby barely stops to breathe. My adopted mother would say that he was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. If you told that to somebody under 30 today, they would not know what you were talking about. Yeah, well, Ma finally got rid of the good doctor, divorced him and all. He left her broke with 5 kids, so there was not much money for quite a while. She had to take a job at this factory. It messed up her hands, working with metal all day. She'd come home at night and they'd be cracked, bleeding, really bad. And then she got herself this well-to-do boyfriend, Harry, who hated all of us kids, especially me, because I knew he was an asshole from the word go. And sometimes I would tell him that to his face. How long did she have him around? Well, here's the thing. After a few months, Harry moves out into the house and starts acting like he owns her and everybody else. They would fight, and then he would get drunk a lot, and it just kept getting worse. What do you mean worse? Well, he broke bones when he was pissed off. I have no idea what to say to this. The ghost looks as though she is about to shed a few tears. Not moving, she's still glued onto that console, wedged between me and Bobby. The raspberry ranch is far behind us now. We're cruising through that flat West Michigan farmland, doing about 70, old dried bird shit on the windshield, a few beer cans that rattle when Bobby turns down a side road and cuts through the fields on a little unpaved public road. The blacktop is left far behind us. Yeah, well, you know, Ma did her best, but you knew something had to give. That asshole was paying for the rent, buying the food, feeding all of us. As long as he was in the picture, she could stay home with us kids and not have to leave us with that weird babysitter all day. Boy, was that girl a piece of work. She was always trying to get in my pants and Richie's pants, trying to play with our little boy Dix. She had this game she'd have us play called Circle Jerk. What an idiot. I want him to keep talking, so I just watch his face and watch the fields rushing alongside of us. Did Lana tell you about Cal leaving home? I shake my head no. Yeah, he left home as soon as Harry showed up. Went down to Florida, got work on a fishing boat with a friend of his. Nope, didn't know that. So I was left the oldest one then at home. Me, then Lana, then Richie, then Danny. Hey, little lady, if you'd been found, you would have been the oldest, not me. Yeah, Harry just kept getting worse. Ended up breaking my arms. First, he broke the right one and then the left one. I'm left-handed, so that second break really messed me up at school. I'm very, very quiet. I don't want to hear this story. But at the same time, I want to hear this story more than anything else. So after my left healed up, Ma told me I had to leave. She gave me $40, told me she had gotten hold of Cal. He was waiting for me in Florida with a job on the fishing boats and that I would be okay. He turns his head away from the road and he glances at me. Looks really young just then. I don't want to know, but I do want to know. How old were you when you left? 14. There's so much I want to say. I want to scream at this birth mother I never met, who's been dead nearly 20 years by the time I find her. Scream at someone who would choose a crazy boyfriend over her own child. Scream at her ghost who is sitting between me and Bobby in the cab. Bobby doesn't blame her for anything. It's like he was never angry with her at all. And I'm sitting there looking just like this monster mama. And that makes me want to scream even more. The ghost looks nervous. She is sitting between one who adores her and one who could happily break her arms. But I don't, because finally, Bobby's not talking. He's quiet. He's sitting right there next to Ma, secure in her love for him, his love for her, and he waits for me to say the next thing. You know what you said about raspberries? I love them too. Absolutely. They are my favorite fruit. Big smile from Bobby. That's part of my dream, he says. Get some cash together, buy some land, set up my raspberry farm. I'd be really good at it too, little lady. The ghost nods.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Our next introducer, our next teacher is Kelly Sokol. Kelly is a member of our board of directors as well, and she's also a fantastic novelist. You should definitely check out Kelly. Her books are available anywhere you can buy books, including online. Kelly is also an amazing member of our community here at the Muse and also in Hampton Roads. She's been so supportive of so many amazing organizations. So she makes a big impact both in the literary community and in the world at large. Let's welcome Kelly Sokol.
Oh, Michael, thank you. I have got my glass of wine because I am pretending with everything in me that we are at La Bella or so, yes, or somewhere gathering together as we have for so many years. And that I know we'll be doing again soon. So I'm so excited that we are able to gather together tonight and to share these words. So readers, thank you all so much. And Michael, Susan, thank you for putting this together. I'm really excited that I get to introduce John Cameron tonight. I've had the good fortune of working with John for several sessions of the Fiction Studio, going on a couple of years now. And he is emblematic of our group in that he will be reading from one of his wonderful historical fiction novels, but he never has only one project going at any one time. He'll be creating, new work, new fiction work, but also honing another book. And I'm thrilled to be able to announce on his behalf that he has a nonfiction book called The Tar Heels in Gray available for pre-order from McFarland Books, and a publication of that book forthcoming. While we don't get to hear from the Tar Heels in Gray tonight, John's mastery of history will be on full display, as it always is in his historical fiction. He is a master historian, but he is also a master storyteller. And I have become deeply impressed with his passion for and commitment to his craft. You'll see his expertise infuses every page, but his characters come just as alive as the history he is rendering for us. So I'm thrilled to get to introduce to you tonight, John Cameron.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to read the prologue from a trilogy I'm working on called The Scent of the Machia. Machia, or maquis, as the French would say, is very aromatic undergrowth that grows all over southern France and especially on Corsica. And this is projected to be 3 novels set mainly in Corsica from 1755 to 1794. So it features Pascal Paoli and lots of Bonapartes. And this is the prologue to the entire trilogy. It's entitled A True Father of Liberty. Today, on this first day of a new century, the year of our Lord 1800, I, Pasquale Paoli, dined in London with Sir Gilbert Elliot. He invited me, no doubt, out of some sense of obligation, owing to our relationship in '94. In a way, it was an echo of earlier glory. During my first exile in London, after the French destroyed the Corsican Republic in '69, I had been frequently feted by the rich and famous. I was supported by King George in case I might in the future be needed against France. People saluted me in the streets as a man of importance. I lived well and devoted myself to building support to return to Corsica. This, my second exile in London at the hand of French radicals, has been of a different order. an embarrassment, reminder of British failures. I scrape by in genteel poverty. The Crown would be happier if I would die. In the streets, I'm an anonymous old man. Yet somehow this week, I received the gilded invitation from Sir Eliot. For a man who exists with only one servant, and I may have to give her up in another year, it was shocking to return to such a magnificent dining room. 20 people at the table with 2 large candelabra, a servant behind each chair, extravagant dishes and rich food. I will not deny my pleasure at being one of the 20. There was not the slightest possibility that this marked a true reversal in my declining fortunes. I was seated well below the salt. At most, I was given polite nods by the other guest. And yet, in this new century, there was a glimmer of the old light. Before we were seated, a young man, hardly more than a boy, approached me with great deference and a deep bow. Might I be so bold as to introduce myself, sir? I am Sir Gilbert's son, John Eliot. And may I say I have long been an admirer. I keep a copy of Boswell's book about you and the Corsican Republic on my desk and frequently refer to it. I never dared to think I might meet one of the true fathers of liberty. I shall not pretend. I was surprised and pleased. When all have forgotten you and you meet a young man who admires you, one's vanity and pleasure are both puffed up to a high degree. But I sought to maintain the proper posture. Sir, you are too kind by far, as was Mr. Boswell. Even so, I thank you for your compliment and am pleased to make your acquaintance. When we were at table, Sir Gilbert's son John was seated just below me on the opposite side. After a decent interval of 2 courses, he gathered his courage and addressed me again. It was not difficult, for no one at the table had the slightest interest in me. Mr. Paoli, may I presume to ask your advice about what is most important for a young man? I should value your wisdom above all others. I was startled. To ask advice of a forgotten man? I gave his question a few seconds' thought before responding. My advice, sir, to a young man of promise is never give yourself totally to any person or any cause, else you will surely be disappointed. He seemed taken aback by my words and withdrew into thought. I don't know whether he appreciated my advice, but it was sincerely given. The noise of the table swept us apart, and I was able to return to my solitude. At my age, there are few teeth left, and one needs to chew with care and deliberation. When the last dishes had been removed and the cloth followed, I was pulled back into things by our host. Sir Gilbert succeeded in getting some quiet around the table by tapping his spoon on his snifter. And when he posed his question to me, there was total quiet. So quiet, I could hear the servants bantering in the next room. Signor Paoli, may I ask your opinion about your countryman who has floated to the top in France? I believe his title is First Consul. I am told you were his godfather. Do you think there's any chance for peace? And do you hope you might now return to your home? I suspect he thought I would be pleased to be the center of attention for a bit. I was not, but courtesy demanded participation. I drank a bit of wine to give myself time, and then gave him my best opinion. The entire table looked, and for the first time all evening, hung on my words. Peace? I'm sure we all hope for such, perhaps even the first consul. But Bonaparte is a general, and your navy treated him very rudely last year on the Nile. There were laughs and calls of, "Hear him." As for my opinion of the man, that is a bit more complex. He was my godson, but I doubt he would acknowledge it today. I will say he is a man of great talent and determination. Sayes and the others underestimated him, and they will come to regret it. As to your last question, no. I do not expect ever to return to Corsica, not even in death. When I last saw Bonaparte in '92, we did not part on good terms. I turned to young John Eliot. My advice again, sir, never give all to any person or any cause. The evening soon ended, and I returned to my home, a fellow diner good enough to take me in his carriage on the way home. My own situation hardly extends to a private carriage, but I've always led an abstemious life, except perhaps when I was first in London in '69. I undressed by the light of one candle, sat in my chair, and thought back over the evening. I had not been completely honest in my responses to Sir Gilbert, but what man ever is? Of course, I hoped that by some miracle, God would permit me to return home. I do not think it likely. No, I shall never again breathe the scent of the machia of Corsica, nor I fear will Corsica ever again be covered by the pure air of freedom in the Corsican Republic. Back
Thank
to
you,
you,
John.
Michael.
Thank you very much. You know, Kelly alluded to it earlier that we have student readings at the end of every session, and we usually would have them in a local restaurant so people can have a glass of wine or a meal during the readings. And in the middle of the reading, which is where we are about right now, we usually go around the room with a hat, a basket, and ask for donations for our tuition assistance fund. And of course, we can't do that in your homes. But if you would just consider that we, especially now during the pandemic, have been helping a lot of students with tuition because we don't, again, want any barriers financially to creative writing education. So after the reading, after you're watching our reading today, if you are so moved to go to our website and donate to that tuition assistance fund, we definitely could use the support. Thank you very much for that. Our next teacher who will be introducing 4 students in a row is Suzanne Rhodes. We're so happy that Suzanne has been teaching with us during this pandemic. Here's why. You know, people talk about silver linings to things. So a silver lining to all the bad things that are going on out there in the country is that Suzanne used to teach in person at the Muse, and then she moved away like a rascal, and now she is teaching on Zoom with us. So we're so happy to have a poet of her caliber with us virtually. Let's welcome Suzanne Rhodes. And you are muted, Suzanne, sorry.
There we go. Thank you, Michael. Yes, that is. Now, why is that showing? Hold on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, greetings from Fayetteville, Arkansas, the natural state, home of the University of Arkansas's wonderful MFA creative writing program, of which Miller Williams was noted for his teaching there, and Bob Arthur got his MFA there, one of the wonderful Muse teachers and poets and writers. And then I'm going to introduce Gloria right now, who has taken, so I taught the intermediate poetry workshop, which I'll be doing again, and a really wonderful experience. Such good chemistry we had, such thoughtfulness, such expert criticism that went on, and such fine work. So Gloria, as I said, she lives here in Fayetteville, and the glory of Gloria is her clear-eyed view of language. Sham, obscurity, and unproven emotion are not to be tolerated, not in her own work or the work of others, which made her an invaluable voice in our workshops. Her poems have crystal clarity with images that carry the weight of her feeling, the mingling of light and shadow, as in this line from her poem, Autumn Duo. She writes, flanking the bare trees by the creek, stands of goldenrod point their spears of bright yellow flowers towards the darkening sky. Gloria has a remarkable hunger to grow and deepen in her craft. It's truly beautiful to see. So please welcome Gloria Tram.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Suzanne. And by the way, this picture behind me, I took myself at a creek near my house. So this is a view of Fayetteville, Arkansas. The first poem I want to share with you is a poem all of these poems are poems I wrote for Suzanne's class. And this is the assignment was to write a persona poem. So this is a poem written from the viewpoint of my friend Hermie. She was a very good friend of mine who died a couple of years ago. So the title of the poem is Hermie's Story. What, me worry? Should have been an epitaph on my headstone, except I wasn't buried, but burned out of existence in the oven of a mortuary. An appropriate ending for someone born before the bombing and burning of Nuremberg. I knew hell on earth, so why worry about hell in the afterlife? My childhood spent in a basement, the upper floors of our building destroyed. I picked my way through its ruins of shattered glass, shattered lives. Americans dispensed first fury, then chocolates to hungry children. Every scrap of food, hoarded, carefully guarded. Our family silver traded for bread and potatoes. My mother taught me to save every pfennig, every crumb. My father, a German soldier, but no Nazi, died in 1947. Another loss, another letting go. So I took my chances in life. I had seen the worst. Nothing could faze me now. My city rebuilt, old enemies now our friends. Met and married a GI, leaving Bavaria for America. I had 3 husbands and 3 horses, loving the horses more, except for Bill, the last one. Like me, he let go with ease. Past wives, past lives. We loved hard and traveled far until he left this earth. When my time was up, I left piles of paperwork, unfiled taxes, unfinished business, a pantry of cans, past best by dates, closets of clothes, long unworn. Why sweat the small stuff? Let others worry, when life could be lived until I ceased to be. The next poem is a poem that Suzanne's, who's a great teacher, by the way, her assignment was to write about a common thing. And I was meditating on this, and it seemed to me the most common thing in my life right then were face masks, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And so the name of this poem is Cover in the Time of COVID. My mask hangs on a hook in the hall closet, ready for me to slip on when anyone approaches my door. A plastic takeout box in my car now holds a variety of masks for all occasions. An N95 for heavy-duty grocery shopping, a lighter medical one for a quick trip, another in white cotton for backup. Stashed in the side pocket of my purse, sheathed in a Ziploc bag, a face covering lies in wait, ready for quick deployment, so I won't be caught off guard by a stranger's breath on my face. Slipping on my disguise, I wonder about all the forms of evasion I've used in my life. My I'm fine, thank you facade, fronting a devastated self. The great to see you smile, to greet the one I dread. The practice pose and poise to be part of, not apart from, my group of peers. I adjust the loops over my ears, pinch the metal nose strip, peering at myself in the car mirror, then head inside smiling at the produce clerk, who may or may not be smiling back, his lips hidden, his eyes flat as they regard me. A mound of yellow onions greets me, their thin, flaky skins concealing the shiny bulbs within. I cradle a round, firm one in my palm, knowing that when I cut it open, I will weep. And that's all. Thank you.
Beautiful, Gloria. Thank you.
Thanks.
Since 2016, Debbie Baxter has been spinning out surprising and splendid images in my workshops, most recently in the intermediate one. Her poetry sings, displaying her keen ear for language's musicality and rhythm. She draws from the grit and grace of life, whether describing a warehouse supervisor who, quote, smokes crack, then drinks a bottle of Jack, or with affection recalling a mixing bowl dented and cracked that's been handed down from 3 generations. Her wry little comments and perceptive insights were just the right touch to bind our group together. Help me welcome, please, Debbie Baxter.
Hi, glad to be here. The first poem is called The Smell of Coffee. The smell of coffee caught in winter's wind pulls me back in time to 40 years ago in the end of fall semester when he finished his studies ahead of me. He asked me to lunch along with some of the others in our writing class, saying he wanted us to be together one more time before he graduated. But his eyes were only on me when he said this, not on the others, something my best friend didn't miss. We went to O'Sullivan's, a place where we shared meals and got drunk on ideas. We asked for the platter of nachos, big as a garbage can lid, our waiter boasted. When it arrived, we dove into the crunch and heat, our mouths messy with words between bites. The whir of a blender, sleet on the roof, and the hum of voices in the dark room warmed us as we toasted our futures with cold draft beer and cups of burning coffee. That was the last time I ever saw him, the man who wrote about me in his poems, kissed my cheek, hugged me way too tight, then went home to his young, pregnant wife. Next poem is written after we had been given the assignment to use a color, and given all sorts of wonderful examples. And I chose green. The Greening, after Walt Whitman. I sing the greening fig tree bent by wind and rain, almost bare as atoms form, still holding on to life, remembering the strength of its many branches. Fruit clings to the highest limbs, closest to heaven, but its leaves are missing, lost in a hurricane's fury. On each bough, tiny nubs grow in perfect points, crave the light, wait to unfold at the sun's signal. The deep brown of the trunk, a dark scaffold, holds up its twisted limbs, some broken but still hanging on. Some have been ravaged. The white sap of their exposed veins shimmers in the light. Like blood, it flows. Then, sticky with the fresh air, it stops on its own. Soon, palmate leaves, wide as hosannas, shield fruit and flower in one body. They reach upward, hopeful green, toward warmth of the steadfast sun. They're fruiting Eden's gift. The last one is one called My Favorite Felon. Joe comes to me with half the rent, real tears in his eyes. I don't cave, I take it, but say it'll only count for half. He earns money under the table, the best that he can do. A felon has to take what he can get without complaint. I know it's a struggle just living these days, earning dirty money from a man who sells defective cars to the poor. When the breakdown inevitably occurs, the buyers return with threats and guns, bricks to bash in heads and windows. This is the world for my young friend. At home, I call him my favorite felon. Never to his face, that would hurt. It's a sensitive subject. He's like another child, my own, and I keep holding on to him to make his life a good one. My own child is in jail. And when he gets out, his world will be in sync with Joe's, two bruised men fighting for life. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. That was really great. The tagline on Fred Levy's Facebook page reads, "After 46 years as a psychotherapist, I retired on 4/17/20 to become a poet and writer. What better grist for poems than the complexities and paradoxes of human personality, both of others and of his own? Fred excels in bringing these to light in powerful, intense poems where we find a searching quality and a certain humility. You see this so much in his work, like his persona poem about Leonard Cohen in his last days, or a poem of truce between descendants of countries hostile to each other. And he writes in that poem, what lingered on time's bleeding barrier broke free on the alchemy of touching. Besides appreciating his poems as we all did and valued his perspective in the workshops, he really had very impressive feedback that was helpful to each member of the group. So please welcome Fred Levy.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Michael, first of all, thanks for inventing the Muse. That's huge. And Suzanne, you know, it's like, there's just no substitute for having the right teacher. I think you have an uncanny knack, with me certainly, but I think with all of us, of getting a really strong sense of who we really are, supporting that person and the writer as an emanation of that person. And then with that basis of really extending belief and confidence, give unstinting, unvarnished feedback, the kind of constructive feedback we absolutely need in order to grow as writers. And to have that balance is phenomenal, and I'm very grateful and thank you. This first poem is the first one that Suzanne mentioned, which is called Leonard Cohen's Last Stories of the Street. The day before 2016's election, I felt your last breath. This is a persona poem. My son, Adam, has bought a medical chair with multiple controls for my aged, pain-wasted back. Now I'm recording this final meditation on mindfully living my dying for a world that wants it darker, to my flame that's dying without embers. For hours each day, I sit by the window, exchanging small smiles and wan waves with housebound neighbors across the way. Each sound rising from below deepens my Montreal reverie, waking with the sun, schoolboys whooping, running to school, store grates rising, aromas of coffee and croissant. 2 years before, I skipped across the stage, doffing my hat to friends who came to rejoin my songs and poetry in a 50-year lover's dance. Now my spirit writes my remedy for the best painkiller found neither at the drugstore nor street. I bow to my death as I sing for my life. I've written to Marianne and our Greek Isle memories. This old body has given up, as yours has too. Your eviction notice is just behind you. I felt unworthy, yet my life embraces me beyond desires or yearning. In my still supple dreams, I am tired, but living each breath as if each would last beyond death. Okay, this next one is called Standing Before Mountains, somewhat based on an experience I had as a very young man back in 1973. It's called Standing Before Mountains. I seek your face. Mount Sinai stands still aglow with moonlight mystery and midnight molten stars. I move with the mountain's sway in glistening light. Feet dance at necromancer's trance that raises splintered spirits that nearly sound like traces of me. From the mountain, I backpack to Yad Vashem, where Israel honors Holocaust heroes and dead. Behind my eyes, every weeping picture reminds me to gather my prayers' living threads. Gentle souls surround my ache. Their love could light a third world country. But all that caring bounces like bullets from Superman's chest. My chest so tight that my beating heart could break my ribs apart. My search for belonging took me from the wilderness to ports of call and long-term destinations. As an older man, I found a synagogue with arms to enfold a mountain of displacement and regret. Ecstatic moments tremble at their own whim and direction, but today I've claimed residence in the book of God's imagination. Thank you. Okay, last one. This is mostly true, and this is about my wife and just some of the vagaries of growing old with someone for 41 years married. It's called She Breathes. Each breath embraces my life. She breathes. I lose sleep, toss and turn away. Her broken rhythms vibrate through my body. The bed's edge comes closer, like a cliff. She breathes. Rumbling erupts from her lips and throat, now an ease-killing rasp. She breathes, she snores. I ask her to flip on her side as my darkening hour only grows darker. Could you kindly turn over? Cooing in her ear, my guilt grows. Patience shreds. What? Her voice leaps towards the strata of senselessness. She breathes. Could you please turn onto your side? Okay. She pulls herself near her nocturnal ridge and conks with an enviable ease. She breathes with a soothing diminuendo. She's 68, married 41 years in elder time. Still awake, I'm drawn to my unyielding source of love, my buffer against loneliness. The bedroom clock stands vigil. With the ease of the reprieved, I sleep. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to introduce our last poet. Every now and then you encounter a poet who rearranges your vision with words and worlds that catch you off guard and lead you to a strange familiar. Lorna Brown Gordon is such a poet. Her poems are often dreamlike and move like a fast river to flood rooms and memories and families where violence, loss, but also humor and warmth constitute her experience as an African-American woman, but never with cliche and slogan. Her poems are real and true. Brianna speaking from the grave. Will mama eat spaghetti every other night because I'm not there to bust her chops and count the carbs? How much of the 12 million goes to the lawyer who appeared at her side out of nowhere? A fishy blessing, but a blessing anyway. Let's be blessed right now by Lorna Brown Gordon.
Lorna, you're muted still.
Thank you, Suzanne. You are so kind. And this is my first Muse class, and it was just such a joy to be a part of that special group. My first poem is my color poem. It's called Dying Parts. Spinach leaves are the same green as the jade plant someone gave me one Lancaster morning. It's dying, but I prune and water it every other Tuesday. My heart, a green like no other, barely flutters as I cook breakfast and wipe away dead leaves from the kitchen counter. Today, the plant shop closed early, so I picked through what was left outside and made a rosemary mint soup for lunch, remembering how you always carried a greenstone in your pocket and planted spinach every spring because Popeye told you to. That's what you said. Popeye the sailor could not take a joke, while Bluto had a head full of hair and loved to laugh. Maybe olive oil chose the wrong guy. A jade leaf, fat and green, appears to recoil from the branch before it falls away. Dying jade, you, me, and Popeye. Phantom history. History slooshed down to sarcophagi, not the pretend that eat the fragments of spoon-fed glass. For this delicious metaphor evaporates, scatters like dust in old minds and grizzled bodies. Seeds and euphemism, dowry notes collect in my hand, abducted from my grandmother's keep box. This evidence scatters like yeast spores over broken waters, dirt roads, fossils, and other dusty things like skin. Name the rascals, the martyrs, name them. Memorialize these kings and drunkards on crumbling schools and parkways. And my last poem is called Prayer Sonnet. I love a supermarket flower, peony, Gerber daisy in a glass by the window, strawberries, cream, and blackberries in a bowl cup of water, reading Terrence Hayes or a stolen copy of Bronzeville Boys and Girls, copyright 1956, when Gwendolyn Brooks had two last names. Love grabbing my man around the middle, slightly above where he wants, and his hands on me mornings before I pee. My daughter hates a homemade card. Funny, I like them best. My son's kisses wet my face, and I do not complain. Mom in a photo wearing my brother's crooked nose, dead the whole time. I have no stories of her, so I make them up. She liked to wear yellow dresses. Daddy props all this up, seals me in. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna. That was wonderful. That last poem especially, I really enjoyed it. I'd like to now introduce to you our next teacher, Allison Shea, who is in some ways the welcome wagon for the Muse. She has been teaching a class with us called Right Now, and she'll tell you about it, I'm sure. But it's a class that's really good for people who might feel a little bit trepidatious about expressing themselves with the written word. She really makes such a wonderful environment that opens up for everyone. So I'm just so happy that she has a student reading tonight. Let's welcome Allison Shea.
Thank you very much. I probably should explain just a little bit about my class. We never edit, ever. We write in the moment. We write on a Zoom. It gets really quiet. for 10 minutes, sometimes 15, sometimes 20, and then we read. So there's no time to edit. So what you'll hear is unedited. This fall, our Right Now evening crowd was small but mighty. And one of our bright lights was the only one who was participating in the daytime, direct from Japan. This student has a strong voice and a style that's wry and self-deprecating and snappy and rich. She can really quickly paint a picture from a tiny little prompt. I'm so pleased to introduce her to you this evening and for you to enjoy her work. I don't know which of her many pieces she's going to read, so I'll let her tell you about it. But I present to you the writer from Japan, Jamie Sturgis.
Hi, good morning from Tokyo. And I first want to say I'm super thankful that the Muse, I guess despite everything that's happening in the world, I'm glad that the Muse is online because it's been about 9 years since I've taken a Muse class. And I'm just excited to be back taking classes at the Muse again because it's been such a valuable part of my life. Like Allison said, we were given prompts, several prompts each week for spans of 10 to 15 minutes on various random things. The piece I'm reading is based on the refrigerator prompt, in which participants volunteered random items that can be found in a refrigerator. And then once our items were all collected on the screen, we took whatever we wanted from that list and used it to write a piece. I think this was I don't remember how long this time was for, but this is what I produced during that time. So this was my refrigerator piece. And here we go. Oh God, this is bad. They're going to see this menagerie of randomness and they'll know how I live. They'll know, oh, that explains everything. That's why if they didn't know about double chin and fatty fats, they'd assume the insulin was mine. How I'm not yet diabetic based on my meal choices is beyond me, trust me. Ranch dressing, bread, sure, balanced out by the yogurt, but the yogurt almost feels like a vanity piece. Fruit on the bottom yogurt? Haha, see? I have fruit in my fridge. The insulin takes up an embarrassing amount. It's a long-term supply and it only gets shipped in big ass shipments, which makes sense because of my 2 big ass cats. Oh God, they'll think I abused the 2 cats by overfeeding them. No, it's genetic. It's like some feline Prader-Willi syndrome, I will try to explain. They can't stop eating. Thank God neither have Pike, or else everything else in my apartment would have been eaten by now. They can't stop eating cat food. If you put one of those tumblers of kibble out, they will persist and eat every last piece of dried food in the thing in one long go and then cry murder. Those comics about cats whining because there's still a ton of food left in their bowls, but they can see the bottom. Nah, I wish. These 2 eat everything, see the bottom and sides and cry, and no amount of exercise yet, no amount of laser pointing, batteries right behind the insulin can get them into shape. So sadly, they're both diabetic. They used to be named Pumpkin and Sweet Potato. They officially still are. But then one day Sarah was like practicing fat people nicknames around them, and Double Chin and Fatty Fats took over. Damn it, Sarah. I still crack a smile. Oh God, yeah, dinner. Okay, well, obviously I have to get something from the delicatessen down the street. I have to get some salad so I can proudly use the ranch dressing. I'll be damned if I share my leftovers. That's tomorrow's meal for me. If this weren't dinner, I could try a crude French toast, but I'd still need butter, or I've never made French toast before. What the hell am I thinking? Okay, so delicatessen, salad, drinks. Yes, drinks. Make as little use of the fridge as possible so they don't see the wrapped packages of cat insulin. But be prepared to share the existence of the cat insulin if one of the guests so much as stink eyes me about my big ass cats. Oh, the poor things. They'll say with pity, but with way more judgment. They have diabetes, I'll say solemnly, and I have to administer insulin shots to them. And then I'll wistfully shift my gaze over to my cats, who will no doubt be within striking distance of the table. Oh, The guests will look away, failing to hide their humility. You poor thing. I will nod and look wistfully again at the cats. I'll fake choke back some emotion. I I love them so much. So much. And then I'll motion towards the salad. I have packets of Caesar salad dressing, or if you prefer, ranch dressing. It's so good you're taking care of yourself, they might say. So many fruits and vegetables on the table, as opposed to at the bottom of a yogurt container. I know. Smirk. I have to set a good example for the cats. The end.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. It seems like oh, there we go. Great. It's funny. I just bought a new smart TV, and I found this video tour of Tokyo, where it's someone walking through Tokyo, and so I was like imagining that I was going to your house to visit, or to our other student in Tokyo, and it was really a very cool city you live in, and of course Jamie used to be a native here in Hampton Roads, so we're very happy. The silver lining is that we'll be able to share with Jamie. That's really wonderful. So our next reader, the teacher for this reader was not able to make it tonight. Our next reader is Tiffany Wayne, so she knows she's coming up. Michelle Youngstone, though, wrote this for me to read. I'm sorry I can't be there to introduce Tiffany as she reads. She's one of the most accomplished and dedicated writers I've ever had the pleasure to critique and workshop. She understands that a writer is going to get out of the workshop experience what she puts into it, and her criticism, her feedback to other students truly reflects her craft. Excuse me. I'm excited to see her novel come to fruition. Let's welcome Tiffany Wayne.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually in California, and I used to have a diabetic cat. But this is the opening to a historical novel that I'm writing about a 19th century photographer in Gilded Age America, 1870s and the 1880s. So this is the very opening. Whatever gossip our classmates had heard, the truth was worse. Our teachers were alerted to watch the moods of the Hooper girls, and the other students were instructed not to make play of death or madness in our presence. An occasional slight from one outside the circle, however, and the cruelty lurking beneath the surface of childhood reminded me where I stood in time, past, present, and future. Clover Hooper, you're going to end up like your mother. I wanted to be happy, like my name, Clover, growing green and effortless in the sun. But every time I tried, even for a moment, someone was there to remind me that such happiness was not mine to claim. My older sister, Nella, took upon herself the impossible burden of protecting my happiness. Impossible because she and I were bound together by what happened in Mother's room that winter day. Our mother was sick for 3 days with fever and convulsions, vomiting and severe pain. The family tended to her, not knowing the cause, but worried for both her and her unborn babe. A child of only 5, I was sent to fetch fresh water and warm cloths from the kitchen every few hours. On the morning of the 4th day, I returned from my errand and entered the bedroom as the infant was finally expelled, without effort on Mother's part, as she was nearly unconscious by then. The doctor was called in hopes that the child, though early, might still be saved. Father stood stunned in silence, and Aunt Carrie leaned in to her younger sister's head, smoothing Mother's brown hair back and shouting orders and questions at anyone who would listen. The doctor opened his bag, pulling out bandages and salves, his busyness betraying the knowledge of what was actually to be done in this situation. What was the situation? Mother had a baby inside of her, that much I knew, but I had never witnessed a birth. I wondered if the baby might still be fine. Perhaps this is just what women have to go through. My horse Prince had died, but we just found him sleeping peacefully in the stable one morning. Father said he had reached old age, was just tired out. But Mother wasn't old and tired. Just last week, she was walking with us outside, collecting gold and red fallen leaves to decorate our table and remarking on the coming chill. Mother convulsed again, but there was no sound. Aunt Carrie scolded us to leave the room. I ignored her, knowing she was too busy to notice if I followed through, and I made myself invisible behind the door. All was quiet, still, collapsed. I was soon forgotten in the chaos and grief, and thus witnessed from the crack in the door the moment my mother expired in a pool of blood without a cry, the limp babe still attached by a knotted rope the color of ash in the corner fireplace. I strained to see. I wanted to know if I had a brother or a sister, but the doctor wrapped it up and put the silent bundle in the bag. He revealed to the immediate family that the loss of mother and child was not an accident of illness. Mother had inserted a small wad of arsenic-soaked wool, which was expelled immediately before the delivery of the child. Father and Aunt Carrie did not accept this explanation for the double tragedy and sent the doctor away, angered, though he was a trusted friend, and he presented the bloodied wool as evidence. My mother's intentions were clear to those outside the family, and the manner in which she administered it to herself brought great shame upon Father, who spoke of neither the incident nor the fact of the child again. I grew up feeling that, like my mother and her mother before her, my life would be cut short. I took some comfort in acceptance of this fact and understood from an early age that entanglements such as marriage and family led only to pain, especially for women. Father says I look like her, but no image of my mother exists to remind us of her likeness. 3 children and a dozen poems, this is the proof that she existed. Though I strain to develop a vision of my mother and of myself as a mother, the images remain unclear. Those poor motherless Hooper children, how will they be raised up without a mother? I was raised up with a mother, just not a living one. The end.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you. So we're going to put everyone back into a gallery view just so we can see everyone as we're closing. So if your video is off, turn it back on. That'd be great, including Susan. You should have your video on too. Anyway, thank you so much. What a wonderful reading we had tonight. I just wanted to mention one more time that we have classes starting in February, and you can get information on our classes and our events, as well as if you want to donate to our tuition assistance fund, just go to the-muse.org, the-muse.org. I just want to thank our audience for watching, those of you who are watching live and those of you who are watching on the recording. Thank you so much for being here. I also want to thank the teachers who guided these students in our fall session. And I forgot to mention Michelle Youngstone is a fantastically accomplished novelist who has, I think, a few LA Times notable books. So thank you to all of our teachers for your wonderful guidance this time. I'm going to applaud you myself. Thank you, teachers. But most of all, thank you to our readers for sharing your words and your work with us. Just wonderful work, and thank you so much for being part of our community and the literary community as a whole around the country and the world. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all.
Thank you. It's fun.